3, 2, and feel good. And let's get rid of this. Oh, no dog. All right, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, welcome back, or welcome to Ted and Yogi's Pac-12 Adventure.
In person.
And thank God I've missed you.
At the Roth pad.
That's right.
Last
time we did this was when we broke down the air raid.
The air raid, yeah.
So check that out. You can still go watch that. That's
that
online.
was good. We'll do that again this offseason. We should tackle a few more of these football formations and football phrases we hear all the time. But I'll tell you, Yogi, I can't help but feel college football rather has entered exactly the realm that I lived in for a long time in baseball. There is no off season. And in fact, the off season is often busier than the season itself. And I think college football is right in the middle of it.
Yeah, I was telling my wife the other day that with all the news happening, she's like, when is the off season? I was like, I'm not even going to take like a hard stance on whether you like the portal, don't like the portal, hate NIL, think it's it's just entertaining now. Like you just sit back and you're like, this is the world we live in. Like not a ton of rules, so a ton of movement. And we saw obviously the staffs with Justin Wilcox, Chip Kelly. They get an extension since the last time we did this podcast, which is huge for us. And then we've seen more news come out on Arizona State, right? Which they fired 2 of the coaches. They were already on administrative leave, and one of them resigns, as well as Zach Hill, the OC, resigns. So we'll see. They got the first spring game on the Pac-12 networks. But what did you think when all that came out?
Wow. I mean, and we were both talking about this, Yogi. The local reaction's pretty intense. Obviously, there's been such buildup and such optimism around Herm and the progress he made. We both were there for a practice before their first game this year, and I know the eyeball test, to me, they passed with flying colors. And as a result, the season was good. It wasn't as good as I thought it would be. So however you want to phrase that. The point being is I'm not sure now how you continue to proceed. And what I fear for Arizona State, and this is something only the leadership can answer, we can't, but we lived this in this conference with Arizona basketball the last couple of years. Once a cloud hovers over, you have to get rid of the cloud, whatever it takes. The cloud doesn't go away on its own. And Arizona finally did this past offseason, remove that cloud, and look where their basketball team is now. I fear that for Arizona State football.
Yeah. I'm really curious to see how this shakes out. Like we've got signing day. I'm calling it portal day next week on Wednesday. ASU, as we were there for the Territorial Cup, Herm said, hey, I'm not going on the road. I'm going to my office to watch all these recruits in the portal. And that's what their class is right now, right? There's a handful of high school players, but majority of guys that have come from other institutions. Where they got a guy from Penn State. They've got guys from all over the country. That will be fun and intriguing to watch. They return players, right? Merlin Robertson didn't enter the NFL draft. Jaden Daniels didn't enter the NFL draft. I like the O-line transfer. So it's weird because the pieces they have, I think, are pretty good when you look at what will be on the field next year. How do they manage all the stuff off the field, right? They elevated the 2 coaches that were interim last year to be full-time. Clearly they're in the mix for an OC, and they just brought in Brian Billick.
That was eye-opening.
Yeah.
Obviously, look, you talk about a Super Bowl winning coach, not just an NFL coach. The guy has a ring.
Yeah.
The big ring. And I'm interested, and clearly now as we're doing this just hours after the announcement of the coaching changes and Zach Hill being out. Apparently, according to the one ESPN story we read, Brian Billick will not be the OC, but I've got to believe he's going to be hands-on.
Yeah.
The offense. He's a Bill Walsh disciple. There's the book that is considered the Bible for football coaching. Brian Billick basically compiled it as the encyclopedia of Bill Walsh's coaching philosophies. So Brian Billick is right there, and got to hope that would be a positive thing for Jaden Daniels. And look, we all know Arizona State had a good season last year. They had a very good run game. The pass game didn't. And the pass game just didn't work. It needs to be better. And hopefully that's why Herm Edwards brought Brian Billick in. And hopefully for ASU, that's the impact Billick has.
Yeah, and they lost some receivers in the portal, right? Yeah. Their biggest receiver, a guy that we liked, he ended up at Florida State along with Micah Pittman from Oregon. So we'll see how it shakes out. What I can't wait to ask you about, though, is have you read the book? Like, you hear about the Bill Walsh book. You can't find it anywhere unless it's like a couple $100.
Come to my house, yo.
Okay, I need it. You and David Shaw have the book.
I bought it. a few years back when I was working for the San Francisco 49ers. It was very expensive because they are rare.
Yeah.
It was out of print. And it's not something you would enjoy it, Yogi. Most of our people listening, if you're a football fan, I don't know that it appeals to you because it's very intricate and detailed about how you build an organization. That's really what it is. But it's Bill Walsh building an organization from step A to step Z, all the way through. How you conduct things, how you choose, how you organize, how you run meetings, how you run practices. It's everything. So for coaches, it has been used as a quote Bible.
Yeah.
But again, Billick, who kind of interned and got started in the coaching business under Bill Walsh with the 49ers, was the guy that really compiled everything.
Yeah. Well, to your point on the cloud, before we move on to the next subject, I think it's, they're head of recruiting, and it's a job that's available now at Arizona State, right? So there's big jobs that are available, right? So does that cloud get removed and Herm Edwards, hits the relative reset button with a new staff? What does an OC think? Or is there still more to come? I think it's all TBD, but this team, they're going to have to when they get to spring. And I think athletes can do this, is not really worry about everything else. Like, they just got to go play. And I think they have enough talent to do it this year, but it's moving forward down the road. Like, what does your class look like next year? Is it still full of portal guys? Is it full of high school players? Like, the development of the players there, when you're hit with things like Arizona State is dealing with now, I think that's what impacts the development program, because down the road at Arizona, they're killing it. I mean, top two class.
Right.
In this league on signing day. They got Tatoria McMillan, number one receiver in California. They get Noah Fafita. We haven't even talked Jaden Delora.
Jaden Delora,
right. They're crushing in the portal. They're up for some huge names for next week just to continue to add to this class. They got the number one receiver on my big board in the portal world in the transfer, a receiver from UTEP, who's just phenomenal when you watch this guy on film. So Arizona's a fun state, and Brian Billick is the biggest mentor to Jed Fish, or one of the biggest.
Right. So here's again to the cloud. I had the chance a few days ago to have a nice conversation with Dr. Bobby Robbins, the president of the University of Arizona, and one of his comments to me was, "Can you believe that a football team that won one game can have such a great recruiting class?" But that's what Jed Fish has been able to achieve, and this is where I come back to the cloud again. What happened at Arizona basketball the last few years was the recruiting became one and dones or international players. And what is succeeding this year are very talented, but they're international players. You couldn't get the real high school, unless it was the one and done high school kid, prep school, AAU kid. So transfer that to football, where it's not the international player, but it's the portal. So are you going to have a team filled with 40 guys that have checked out of someplace else? And let's face it, somebody's in the portal for a reason.
Yeah.
And I've said that forever, and I know everybody's in the portal today, but there's something to that. And that's why if Herm Edwards is to recognize what we've all expected him to there, given his credibility and having a Marvin Lewis at his side for all these years, and now bringing in a Super Bowl coach, you want you want more Jaden Daniels, guys that you come in for 4 or 5. Stay, develop, get better. That's still the root of football. I don't know that you can build, and you tell me if you differ, can you build a long-standing program now just playing the portal game?
I don't know. That's like my biggest thing that I'm looking forward to in the spring is the portal versus high school recruits versus development of players, right? And the development of a culture in a locker room, right? So if I come in and I am just coming in for my 1 year, am I really about the program? Like every school has an elite portal guy. Stanford has a portal guy, safety from Oklahoma, who's awesome. ASU has a bunch of them. Every school in this conference, we're going to get into the quarterbacks, have a lot. What flips? Like, we always knew that the NFL was everybody's dream, but now is it even with building the program, or is it even further ahead of the jersey that I'm wearing? Like, do the players really care? And what I would say to the players is, man, I know it's about NIL or the money you may be able to make, but nothing will help you when you're my age or your age than where you went to school, the network, the jersey, the logo. Like, there's still nothing like that. Right. You lean on it. So I don't know. I do think this, though. Out of all the coaches in the league, Herm is at the top in terms of, you said, bring a bunch of people that have 1 year together, much like he did in the pros.
Right.
Like, he can manage that really well. So I'm excited to watch that.
Yeah, and that you hit it, because that is more of a pro model where you don't you don't know what you're going to have year to year on a pro team. So I get that. And I just come at it from wondering whether in this craziness era now that we're entering, is the portal still something you use to patch holes?
Yeah.
As Oregon has tried to do. And they're trying to do it again.
Brandon Adams, yeah.
Patch that hole at quarterback with how many different years they've tried to do that. But the rest of the team's pretty good. I mean, the rest of the team's pretty solid. So I get that. When you say I've got to fill 20 positions using the portal, that's the one I don't know. And maybe somebody can ping us and say there's an example of how it's worked. I don't know of one where that's worked.
Yeah, I don't think it can be for ASU every year of how they build the thing, to your point. And I love, and we're not trying to comp ASU and Arizona all day long, but I love the nucleus of young talent. Arizona's going to have over 30 players on campus. A lot of them are already there. Dynamic competitors and elite players. Like, this team's going to take a jump. Bowl game, I think, is the goal for them this year. But in 2 years, if they keep recruiting like they have, I mean, they might take, we'll see what happens on Sunday. They might take an edge rusher flip him from Michigan. 1 win, CFP.
Yeah.
Think about, I mean, that's just a different planet than what we would have said a couple years ago.
Let's talk about some other coaches in the conference, others that have stayed. Chip Kelly, new deal at UCLA since we last talked, had to make a change at DC.
Yeah, and we still don't know what the change is.
Right.
So you look at OC at ASU, DC at UCLA. Lost Johnny Nansen to Arizona. When I was prepping for Sunday, I went back and looked at every roster, and I'm like, okay, what's the truth? What's the talent? Don't be emotional. Don't be on campus. UCLA is still going to be really good. Like, I get Utah's the favorite in the South, and I'm sure I'll put them there. But again, I look at UCLA and I say, okay, you've got tools on offense. You got the best duo in the league, in my opinion, Zach Charbonnet, DTR. Right? Cam Rising and Tavion Thomas, they're right there, but I'd give the nod to UCLA.
That's big, exactly.
And then defensively, Mitchell Agude comes back, right? Look at what they've done in the portal at a bunch of different positions. They've got talent. Like, they're losing Quantrez Knight, but Martell Irby's still there. We know he played well. They're losing Quentin Lake, but they've got some guys in the back end that have played well. And in the portal, they've done a nice job every year. Ali Cajo from Alabama. They're getting a receiver in from Duke. Like, guys that come from either extremely high production programs or high academic standing programs, right? Jordan Genmark-Heath, the Notre Dame linebacker last year. So they can come in and they're not going to me, be like problem guys. And most of them are not like they had an issue and they didn't really produce. It's like, yeah, it's 70 catches. I was an all-ACC wide receiver, but I want to come play at UCLA. So I'm bullish on them. I'm glad they extended Chip. Defensively, I'm very intrigued to see where they go. You can argue philosophically, should you be a 3-man front defense? Should you be a 4-man front defense? Stanford, they're going to have to make a decision on which way they want to go after the way last season ended. But I'd imagine because he signed his deal, it's a sought-after job. And then you add in like Akaika Malloy. He's now coaching there from UW. Like, he's done a nice job bolstering that defensive staff after losing a couple coaches.
Yeah. Cal, Justin Wilcox stays. And we know, I think everybody listening to us would now know the possibility of the romance with Oregon. He stays at Cal. I've had some pretty good information about the aftermath of that and how Justin really committed to Cal, to stay at Cal. And here's another conversation I can relay. I've talked about this just in the last 24 hours with Mark Fox, the basketball coach at Cal. And, this is interesting when you ask, because the basketball coaches, football coaches at these schools know each other. Mark Fox could not speak highly enough of how, when this happened in the last couple of weeks, his conversations with Justin were all about what was going to be better for the program, for the staff, for the facilities, not about Justin. Nothing. When Mark Fox says that registers. And it speaks so much to the guy we've come to know. And obviously the next step now is to translate this into getting Cal football into contention again.
Yeah.
But I think it's such a wonderful compliment to Justin Wilcox and how Cal benefits greatly by him staying.
Yeah, man. I talked to Justin after he signed his deal. And for the Cal fans listening, know this. He's so excited to go try to win the North Championship, go win a Pac-12 championship. Something hasn't been done there, right? And he's always been motivated, and this is just my take. I feel a little bit of different juice from him, like reinvigorated juice. And they've gone through a lot. It's fair to say everybody has, but Cal, at least in the world of college football and COVID in 2020 and 2021, it's been a lot. And I just feel like it's almost like year one for him, but he's got a bunch of years of experience as a head coach. They obviously bring back both coordinators. They bring in the defensive coordinator, Coach Sermon, his son now, Jackson Sermon, transfers from UW. So he's going to fill in the linebacker position that Coin Dang departs. You hope Brett Johnson comes back. They've got one of the better corners in the conference coming in, a sleeper they'll sign on signing day. Overall, again, you look at the roster, and if Jack Plummer, Will's brother from Arizona, can do some of what he did at Purdue, I mean, he's 6'5". He's a big passer. This is not Chase Garber's zone read, run game, RPO style. Like, this is going to be – we're going to see their offense. I think when you look at Bill Musgrave and his pro background, I think we're going to see more of that in the spring.
All right, so let's morph out of coaches now to players, quarterbacks.
Yes. Oh, God, let me get my list.
I've been strong that this was not a great year for quarterbacking overall in the conference, and it needs to, to contend on the big stage, it needs to be better.
Yeah, bro.
All right, so we have the returners. We know Jaden Daniels is coming back. We know Dorian's coming back at UCLA. Right now, who's the newcomer or comers? Maybe I'll give you two coming in that have the chance to make the biggest impact.
Okay, let's just take Caleb Williams out of it, because it's what? 3 o'clock on Friday, right? By the end of the day.
It's 3 o'clock on Friday. Do you know where Caleb Williams is?
Totally. I hope you have a cocktail. And by the end of today, what I'm told from people at SC is you got to be enrolled by the end of the 28th.
Today.
So we'll see if that happens by the time we're done recording this.
Yeah.
Okay, newcomers. I go Cam Ward at Washington State. He came in from Incarnate Ward. I watched him on film last night. I was like, oh, this guy's kind of fun to watch.
Coming with his OC.
Come with his head coach.
With head coach
and OC. Yeah, which to me, like, I didn't really dive into that story until the last couple of days. And I'm like, this is a big deal. This isn't like you're just coming with your position coach. So I'm really intrigued. First time-ish head coach in Jake Dicker, right? He had his little bit of a run last year. So I'd go there because they got a lot of sneaky tools. Like, they still have some edge rushers on defense. I like their secondary. They're always going to have wideouts. They have tight ends now, Ted. Like, get ready to call games. Like, they're going to have multiple tight ends on this roster. We'll see them on the field.
Wait a minute. An air raid team?
The Coup Grade. Yep, the Coup Grade.
With tight ends?
With tight ends. Yeah, so we'll have to do that.
I remember that from our air. Because that's the thing is, we know Leach had no idea what a tight end was.
No, I don't know if he does yet.
Yeah.
So I'd go with him. And then I'm torn, right? Like, I think Jaden DeLaura is 3 wins. Like, I think we saw the dynamic element in his game. Bo Nix at Oregon. He comes with his OC.
Yeah, so let's leave DeLaura out because he's in the conference.
Okay.
He's transferring within. So I'm talking about the guys you referenced, the Purdue plumber coming to Cal. But Bo Nix is clearly
I'd go Bo.
The top.
Yeah, Michael Penix still has to get healthy.
At UW.
Yeah, I think I can't wait to see what happens there. Sam Hewitt, I had a chance to connect with him a week or two ago. As confident as he's been, loves the staff. I think that the hype around UW is so tempered. I'm going to tell you that I believe offensively they're going to be so impressive this year. We saw it firsthand with Fresno State, UCLA last year. He's so excited about the system, right? And just a couple meetings in. So I'd probably go there. Like, Colorado has Maddox Kopp coming in, who was an Elite 11 quarterback 2 years ago. Threw for 1,000,000 yards, ended up going to Houston, stayed for, whatever it was, and then ended up into the portal. He'll be his second year in college. But Bo, and I think to your point earlier, and I'll say this, when we talked to Mario Cristobal, it was midseason. We just did Washington State, Oregon State, driving to the hotel, and they had a bye week. And I was talking about coaching rumors. And he's like, man, we're built to win next year, Yogi. Why do I want to take another job? Now, Miami wasn't a thing then, right? His alma mater. And it hit me like, yeah, Noah Sewell, guys on the offensive front, like you thought Travis Dye would still be there, whatever. Devin Williams, like they've got dudes there. Mace Funa. So Bo Nix can go in, and I think this team is the favorite today for the North, and I think them in Utah, wouldn't be surprised if we saw them again.
Who do you think is the best returning quarterback? I'll give you my vote. I think the highest upside is Tanner McKee at Stanford.
Yeah.
That's my sense.
What do you think of Stanford? Like, I'm still like
puzzled. Had some conversations on that recently. A lot of people, no changes apparently. We were wondering whether David Shaw would make some changes internally. Nothing that we're aware of has happened. There is a complete puzzlement over the departure of both running backs. Both
Yeah.
running backs. Stanford didn't run the ball well. We know that. We know, I think it's very clear to everybody, their line play is not at the level it was in the peak years of David's run. Are those two connected? Possible, right?
Yeah.
It could be a logical conclusion to reach. But yeah, I mean, it's clearly, and for those who may not know, I spent a lot of time. I spent 13 years around Stanford, so it's a little bit in my heart, and it's stunning because normally we just assume that somebody that chooses to go play football at Stanford values the Stanford education, values the degree they're going to get, because that's a lifetime. That's a lifetime, far above and beyond the end of football. Well, when these players then decide to leave and pass up on that, that's, to me, that's just jarring. It's jarring.
Yeah. Like, I think going into the spring, Tanner McKee and Michael Wilson are the best duo at quarterback and wideout in the league. Because they played a little together. Like, who else? Jaden Daniels and...
We're exempting the USC potential combination from that.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
All right.
And even then, like, the receivers that they brought in a young man from Oklahoma. I think he had 35 grabs last year. It's not like he had 70 catches. And,
right.
and
So
Caleb
you're
Williams.
the best returning combo.
Yeah, like the one I'm most... Like, I think they will be lethal this fall. I believe in that. We'll see what other combos come up. But it's hard for me when I think about that. Because I think Tanner... Every NFL scout would say the same thing. I think, Tanner McKee. But there's a world, and I get in a lot of debates with college football people around DTR. He might be the guy that I would choose, and here's why. He played only his senior year at quarterback. So now in his life... High school, yeah. He's got 4-ish years of college, right? COVID, it was a shortened season, and a season in high school where they blew out every team, and he barely played in the fourth quarter. So he's got about, call it 5 years of quarterback experience. And I think when you look at his turnover numbers every year, when he's on, which, he's not perfect, but I just think his trajectory has constantly gone up. And as a DC in the league, you're like, damn, that guy, when he's on, he's scary. So part of me wants to say him.
Yeah. Competitor, we saw that hands down this past year. There's no
teammate.
No questioning that, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's not... I mean, we talk about it, but, as broadcasters, you walk out of the booth and you're like, all right, what do you really think? And it's not like during every game we called for UCLA was lights out, but they had moments, second half of Colorado game, right? He was incredible. I think it was his 21st or 22nd birthday that night.
Yeah.
So part of me wants to say him. Part of me wants to say Jaden Daniels. Like, I want to see the next phase. Like, I'm so excited about him, but I don't know. Like,
so I'm going to ask you the next question, because I think they are connected. And we didn't talk much about this during the season, but as I said, I thought the quarterback play in the conference wasn't where it needs to be. Wide receivers. See, I would say, who's the best wide receivers? Who has the best group of wide receivers coming back in the conference? I think, because we're talking about Jaden Daniels, who did he throw the ball to last year? Ricky Pearsall, nice job.
Yeah.
And Hodges, the tight end, became a reliable, very good target for him. The wide receivers...
Totally.
I mean, the other wide receivers, no. There was nothing there.
They had, remember the class they had too?
I know.
Right? It was like Jordan Porter, who's since transferred. It was
Johnny Wilson, who's transferred.
Ocho Cinco's son.
They didn't do anything.
Chad Johnson's kid. Like,
didn't produce.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I did a study in advance of signing day where I was like, let me look at like some of the best receivers. Because what has shocked me is like Oregon hasn't had, like, who do you think about? Who's the best weapon in the passing game that Oregon's had in the last decade? DeAnthony Thomas. Right? Who's like hybrid type of player.
Yeah.
So I went through every team and I went through my list. I was like, all right, who are the best receivers at every team, right? SC easily is like the first team that you talk about, right? Whether it's Drake London this year, Marquise Lee, Robert Woods, like they have a bunch of guys. And you can name one or two guys pseudoly at every school. Arizona, you would say Austin Hill, possibly, or Caleb Jones, the transfer from Texas who came in and played well there. But nobody like jumps through the roof.
No.
But you can go to every school, right? ASU, N'Keal Harry, Brandon Ayuk, Oregon State, a bunch of guys. Go down the list. Cal, like they had Chad Hansen, who's still playing in the NFL. Stanford, of course, like Montgomery, Semi
Fahoku, and Arcega Whiteside.
right?
Good receivers. And I guess where I'm going with this to me is, we're all watching Joe Burrow throw to Jamar Chase right now, the college connection that's now threatening to play in the Super Bowl. And I mean, we understand the SEC, but I'm saying that's the kind of game-breaking receivers that seem to multiply in the SEC. And I started thinking about that this week. Is that I'm kind of getting on the quarterback thing, but I'm going, it's the receiver thing too.
Yeah,
it's the receivers.
Well, right now, and we'll do it on the next pod. I'm going to go through and rank my top players at every position in the league because some are still arriving. Brendan Rice transfers to SC. Very interesting. You look at a lot of Mel Tucker's class has transferred. I think there's something to that, right? I think Colorado's getting dinged a ton with guys leaving. Well, I think it's fair to say, well, they came there and they thought they were going to play for a different guy, and the circumstances and whatever they probably thought they were walking into may have altered. So I think Colorado's going to be in a really good position with when you talk to their staff, what the players they're bringing in, they all want to be there. But to your point on the receivers, it might be T-Mac, Tatoria McMillan. He's top player in California, owned the Poly Bowl when he was just there. He's going to be a true freshman. So this year's class at wideout is pretty good. The portal's pretty good. But if you look at it, who's the biggest threat coming into spring ball at wideout? I don't know, man.
You said Michael Wilson at Stanford.
Yeah.
If he's healthy, assuming he's healthy. And that's where I'm going. And that's something I hope that in the signing's almost finished, and the portal, I'm not sure, there's probably still a couple of thousand people in there, but I'm hoping that that's position that we can identify a couple of,
I got receivers for you.
Wide receivers that impact games, that defensive coaches spend the week going to the game worried about, like they did about Drake London this year.
Yeah. So when we do the spring tour, I want to see the second and third year players that were huge recruits ball out. So Kyle Ford at SC. He was top 5 high school receiver I've ever seen at the Elite 11. I'm talking just mossing everybody. 2 knee injuries. How's he recovered? Can he finally be that guy? I look at Jalen McMillan, one of the top receivers in California. He's at UW, chose to stay there in this offense. Roma Dunzier, I think both of those can be all-conference wide receivers. 6'2", 6'4", can make plays. The offensive passing game, it's not a surprise, was relatively non-existent at Washington last year. I think that's going to be a total flip this year. Troy Franklin, one of those big players that kind of did some things for Oregon down the stretch. Can he finally be that guy? Devin Williams, another one. So I think there's some players that kind of I don't want to say in years past at running back, but when you're there's a lot of talent when you're an insider, but on the outside looking in, you're wondering who's the NFL prospects. I can't wait this spring to see some of those guys in year 2 and year 3.
So think back, to the last week of our season. We did the Arizona State game. So during the week, we're on the call with Arizona's coaches, and Don Brown comes on.
Yeah, great. Well said.
Veteran defensive coordinator, spent his entire life in the East and Michigan. Comes out here for 1 year, and now he's going back to UMass. So I asked him on the call, remember, he said, I'm interested. You're the guy that comes in from the outside. What'd you think of the Pac-12? What are you going to go back and when people ask you, what are you going to say? He goes, yeah, man, you really run the ball well. Run the ball well.
Yeah.
There was a lot in that answer, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was a great question. And I've talked about that since then of it's hard as a DC to come in. We've always said that in this league because of the diversity, but you don't think running the ball necessarily when you think of offense and defending
in 2022 football.
Right.
No.
But I do think our league has been the leaders in the vogue nature of tight ends and bringing them back to life.
Yeah.
Right. And we can call them H-backs, F positions. We can call them, I don't know, whatever we want to call them.
Watch on Sunday, Debo Samuel is leading the charge to blur now. Football is going to go the way of basketball, I think. Yeah. The positions aren't going to mean the same.
Yeah.
The responsibilities are blurring, and you're going to have more positionless, or as some people have called it, the offensive weapon, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's funny because that was the nickel defender in college 7 years ago. Now that's the thing in the league. Yeah. You draft somebody to go play that position for you. Yeah, the run game's interesting. Well, we're going to break down I almost said Oklahoma, the SC run game. Because we talked a little bit about that in the Air Raid pod we did last offseason. But I can't wait to talk about running backs, Travis Dye, Austin Jones, Darwin Barlow, And they had a freshman last year whose name I'm forgetting at running back, and they brought in the top back in the country in signing day.
Right.
Like is SC going to be UCLA in terms of they want to run the ball to set things up? And
well, you know where I'm coming on that answer.
Yeah.
So I sure as heck hope so.
Amen.
Regain your identity.
Yeah.
And believe me, I'm not sitting here suggesting you have to ground and pound. That's not my point. But successful football, just watch, whether it's Saturday or Sunday, successful football, it's very hard to sustain it throwing the ball 60 times a game.
Yeah.
You have to be able to run it.
Yeah. I still go to the end of the day, you go to the championship game every year.
Yeah.
What do the teams do? They usually play really good defense, and they're physical up front and can run the ball when they want to run it. And we saw that in the champ game, which was cool for Dan Lanning going to Oregon. I can't wait to get there for spring ball. But the running game, I think, in this league is going to be interesting because it's going to make noise in the draft. Rashad White, he's going to be probably the first back taken out of the Pac-12 when you think about it. And then the movement at running back, we'll see what Max Borghi does. He might be one of those, as you referenced, like specialty playmakers in the NFL if he gets wherever he nets out at. But I'm kind of intrigued because there's a lot of battles this spring at that position. Like who the best back in the league is. I think you're going to go Zach Charbonnet or you're going to go to Utah, right? One of those two guys. Everywhere else, for the most part, Arizona, there's a battle. ASU, there's a battle. SC, there's a battle. Colorado, Jarek Broussard hit the portal, so We'll see what happens there, which is surprising me again. We reference Utah. You look at the North Cal, there's going to be a battle there. Christopher Brooks, he ended up entering the transfer portal, which was interesting because I thought he did a nice job when he was there and healthy. Stanford will have a position battle. They got 3 guys there now after losing 2 of them to the portal. Let's see. Oregon State will have a battle.
Yep.
Oregon will have a battle. UW has 6 guys, I think, in the backfield. And then Wazoo, same deal. So there are going to be some names, I think, that emerge there within the league that the new DC, a la Don Brown, will have to figure out.
Yeah. Let me throw a couple things out here because we were talking a lot about the game, which I like, but now the other stuff that happens. Transfers within the conference.
Yeah. Used to sit out a year. Or 2.
And
used to sit out 2 years.
And it was, that's old in school, but I'm wondering if, and I have no idea about the legality of this, so I have no ability to comment on that. But at some point where college football needs structure, and somebody's going to have to lead here and bring structure to what now is utter chaos. So one of the things to me that, and because there is no overseeing body, we understand that in college football, the conferences all run their own show. And as I've talked to you about, it's the Brando scene. It's the 5 families sitting together in the warehouse and The Godfather. And ultimately the 5 families, each family only cares about their own family. That's their responsibility. That's all they care about. One of these families is going to have to step up and do something about putting some structure in. And that's the first thing I'm wondering about. And I understand we don't want to limit rights for players. That's not the point. But for the competitive nature of the sport, which is essential, do we have some governor on transferring within a conference?
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I've talked to enough coaches where in recruiting, because NIL is a big deal, and I'm going to answer your question, you're not allowed to incite to play, right? You can't pay for play, basically. But there's a lot going on in NIL where it's like, Ted, you come to my school, I have this deal set up for you. Every coach, almost every coach I'd say I've talked to said the first question is no longer, what is school like? What's your system like? It's, hey, so what do you got?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
What's the deal like? So I think as that exists and continues, you're going to see coaches, and they lose a recruit. If I'm recruiting you and I lose you because you go to school X, I'll say, you know what, I get it, Ted. You're going to go there for that deal, but I'm going to get you next year. Just come on back after you get that thing.
Yeah.
And that's the world where, like, interconference transfer is one thing, but how about interconference tampering is another, right? Because let's be real, like, tampering exists. I hear from enough players that are like, hey, Yogi, what's out there in the market? And I'm like, bro, I don't do that. I don't do the street agent thing.
Yeah.
But they're asking about rosters, and they're trying to figure out, like, if I enter the portal, where can I go? And most players already know where they want to go. Well, why and how? Because their coach, their high school coach or their mentor has already talked to these guys. So the interconference thing, I think a couple years down the line, it's like, well, hey, I'll just get you in a year, man. Like, if it doesn't work out where you're going.
Yeah.
away we go. And I don't know. When I was growing up, I used to
Yeah.
think that would be cool in high school sports. Like, what if Lackawanna Trail traded with Dunmore and we got a new receiver on my team? But now watching it,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I agree, because you mentioned, and I think something that's going to be, I've heard this, and I don't have any concrete proof, but I've heard that the other thing you're recruiting now and dealing with are much more involved parents.
Yeah.
Much more involved parents because of the financial windfall that's out there. And so here's my other, and these are the two words, and I said this about 5 years ago with you and these guys about free agency, and I know college people hate hearing that and they roll their eyes. Look what we have. It's
worse than
unadulterated
that.
free agency right now.
It's way worse.
It's total free agency. So my point is, the next two words that somebody's going to have to introduce in college football right now: salary cap.
Yeah.
Salary cap. When you have NIL out there, I mean, and these are just stories. Who knows what's myth and what's real? But when you start hearing the millions of dollars being thrown around by schools in NIL through their boosters, obviously, again, it's not through the football office. We get that. At some point, again, this gets back to my structure theory. This sport's going to need structure, and it may. I mean, unbelievably, did you ever think we'd be saying that? I've thought about this a lot in the last month when I hear these stories about the NIL. Again, the NIL payoffs that are there, and this wonderfully righteous, upstanding thing, and the players have been getting shorted, and they need to share in the windfall. Okay, we all get that. These politicians all stood up because it was an easy thing to do. All these politicians that have no spine on a lot of other things stood up to hammer colleges and have, okay, great. But now, when the pendulum goes way over here, do we need a salary cap for, again, the competitive nature of a sport that, by the way, you're selling as a product? You sell it not just to television, but you sell it to your alumni and your boosters. You sell tickets. Not too many people get excited about watching 73-6 every week.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. There's so many, to your points. I'll give you some examples of rumors. I don't know if they're true. Every position in a certain conference has a working agreement on what that position's market value is. I don't know if that's true or not. If people tell me that's a rumor, people dispel that rumor. Mm-hmm. Other rumors. There's only 4 to 12 schools in the country that really have a handle on NIL and the quote-unquote deals. Everybody else is pretty much in the same boat, which is working on the quote-unquote fund or not having a fund and just doing what NIL was meant to do, which is allow guys to profit off the name, image, likeness, social media, whatever it is, like be able to make a little of that extra change. That to me is going to be the dialogue, and it's so different everywhere that I don't know when it's going to be agreed upon to talk about and agree on the rules moving forward. Because we've seen it. There's a rule, there's a loophole. There's a rule, there's a loophole. There's a rule, there's a loophole, and that's just how it works. So I don't know. Part of me hates the fact that the NCAA has just kind of said, "Hey, all right, I'm out. Do your thing," and part of me likes it because it's forcing people to look at the real reality of, wow, this thing can get dark. So in 2 years, and we're sitting on this couch, I'm really curious to see what each respective conference does or is there now going.
And I'm being very careful here to not, and I hope I'm not coming across as a get off my lawn guy. Yeah. That's not the point. I understand where we are. My sincere hope for the future of college football, though, is that there needs to be, again, structure so that this thing, we continue to have a game, contests that are fair, that are relatively balanced. People want to watch. And again, nobody wants to watch, Alabama beat the Citadel 73-0 every week. So, it may wind up being Vanderbilt and Mississippi State and schools in their own conference that are doing that. Nobody wants to see that. There's no value to that. So I think, because it's very clear that this has happened with such speed that no one's been prepared. Everybody needs to collectively step back here and get some more thought about how we do this the right way and have some structure to this. So those are why the two issues I raised: interconference transfers and salary cap. When you hear some of the rumors about some of the SEC schools and what their NIL budget, for lack of a better term, or maybe the accurate term, is, when you hear the numbers, it's staggering. And again, I can't sit here and say that's fact or is it myth, is it hyperbole, but it gets your attention.
Yeah, and I wonder how long. Let's just pretend it's fact. How long it can go on? Like, how long can you create a fund that's in the tens of millions of dollars every year for players? How do athletic departments survive?
Yeah.
Do those donors want to keep doing that? There's a lot of stories. There easily could be a movie about it, and we'll continue to hammer it out on this show. So, Ted, this was fun. In person. Right? We're going to do it. When you come back, you're going to the Olympics. Wish you the best of luck there.
In Stamford, Connecticut,
Yes.
not overseas.
Yes. So we'll be watching. My family loves it when Ted is on. Olympics 24/7 in this house. And then when we come back, we'll have spring ball will have begun at Arizona State. A couple of schools will be ready to roll, and we will be in full spring preview. So hit us up with whatever it is you'd like to talk about or hear about. Ted and I got you. We'll bring Michael back in as well. He's busy. He's doing hoops. Got a lot happening.
Champagne.
Yeah, Champagne, Michael, indeed. We appreciate the time.